if everyone is ready. Look, it's great to be with you this morning, joined by my colleague Llew O'Brien, the member for Wide Bay, and David Maywald, the just recently elected chair of the International Council for Men and Boys. In fact, David was just elected chair this morning, so congratulations, David, first Australian to hold this role. And today we're here to talk about a really important issue, about allowing, probably the most important issue actually, most significant event in my life, in most people's life, is the birth of a child, your own child, and you only get that moment once with a newborn. They grow up pretty quick, and it's really important that we give time. We allow mums and dads to have time with their newborns, both for their own enjoyment, but more importantly, we know that the most important thing for the development of a newborn child is that time, special time, with their mother and father. And now it's been a good thing, a great thing, in the past decade or so that this Parliament has provided minimum paid parental leave for mums and for some dads. But today, here to highlight an issue where, with some changes in recent years, dads whose mum or partner does not work or has not been in work are not accessible, cannot access the paid parental leave provisions. Seems like a pretty big loophole to me. I don't think we should have newborns in different categories, that if both parents work, the newborn does have entitlement to time with their mum and dads, and if their parents don't both work, they don't. It should be different classes here. All parents deserve time with newborn babies, and I'm very passionate about this because I want to see Australians have more children. I think it's important for people. People want to have children, but it's hard right now. We've got to support families to do this, support all families, no matter whatever choices they make about work, and I think this is an excellent idea to fix. And so I want to give credit to Llew O'Brien. Lew's been appointed in recent months the Special Envoy for Men and Boys. He's been working very hard, holding forums all around the country. He held one in my hometown of Rockhampton a few weeks ago, and this idea has come through those discussions about a glaring omission, a glaring gap. And this weekend at the Nationals Conference here in Canberra, Llew will be moving a motion to fix this. I think it's an excellent initiative. I give him credit for bringing it forward, and I'll get him to explain it a bit more. No, absolutely.
Well, thanks, Matt, and thanks everyone. So since Matt has appointed me as the envoy for Men and Boys, I've been travelling around the countryside holding forums with men and women and groups who support men to find out what's been happening in their world and how we can support them better as a future government. The statistics for men are quite concerning and quite shocking in many areas. Around suicide, 3/4 of all suicides are men, and that is a number that has increased over the past year. Men and boys are overrepresented in preventable diseases and illness, and boys are slipping behind in education, particularly in literacy. So we're looking at finding answers to these very, very serious problems. Another area that continually comes up is the breakdown of the family and family courts, but what we really want to do is get ahead of that. We want to support families so families don't break down, and that's where we come to what the topic of today is, which is fixing the paid parental leave scheme so all dads have access to it. So in 2023, when the changes were made, what occurred was that men were effectively attached to the mothers, or fathers were attached to the mother's paid parental leave. So the mother has to satisfy a work test where she's worked 10 months out of the last 13 to be eligible for paid parental leave, and then there is a reserve amount of time within her leave that she's not able to access herself, but can be allocated to the father. Now, that means that if a dad with a newborn, if the mother doesn't meet that test, he's not eligible for that basic level of paid parental leave. So a good example would be if a mum if a mum and dad decide they want to start a family, to have a baby, and then after the first baby's arrived and they're raising that little one, they decide, you know what, we're going to continue on and have our family now, which might mean that mum resigns from work and is working all the huge hours that a mum does. They have their second baby, and that second baby, dad can't have the leave that he may have had the first time round. And anyone that's got a little toddler and a 2-year-old knows that when that second baby comes, that's probably when you really need dad home. So this is a change that has stripped a very important support away from dads and mums, and we're keen to correct that with 4 weeks of paid parental leave for a dad that stands alone, that doesn't where the dad doesn't have to, the mum doesn't have to meet a work test. I see this as extraordinarily important because so many of the problems that I've just mentioned would be helped and supported and if the family unit is stronger. I believe we need to look at every possible way we can support the family unit, and this is just a start, but I'll be raising it as an urgency motion at the Nationals conference on the weekend, hoping to get the support of my party so we can take this forward as a policy going into government, where we're the party of families by supporting both mums and dads when they're starting a new one.
David Maywald, Chair of the International Council for Men and Boys, and we strongly support this motion. We recognise that it's crucial for mothers and for fathers to be actively involved in their children's lives, and this motion gives extra flexibility for fathers. In my case here in Australia, I had 1 week of paternity leave after my son was born, and I had to dig deeply into my other leave entitlements to be able to give my wife and my son and family the care and attention that they needed during that crucial time. We're well aware of the challenges of raising boys and girls, and the strong leadership being shown by the Nationals, including Matt and Llew, both proud fathers, is really making a positive difference so that mothers and fathers can actively and care for their children and be heavily involved in their children's lives.
Thanks, David. All right, any questions?
Senator Canavan, are you pushing the coalition for a broader family policy? I know you've previously talked about income splitting, and the most recent figures for the family tax benefit A show only 44% of Australian families are in receipt of that. Is the government doing enough to help families?
Look, short answer, yes I am. I would love to see, I want to see us provide more support for families, including families that want to have a situation where one of the partners, mum or dad, stays home for an extended period of time in a newborn's life. We're talking today about providing that initial bit of leave, but obviously the more we can maximise it, the better. It's a great injustice in our tax system that a single income family on roughly an average income will pay somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 more a year in tax than a double income family. Grossly unjust. So I've thought that for a long time. We're doing a lot of work on that. My colleague Matt O'Sullivan is working very, very hard on different ideas about what we can do. And you ask, is the government doing enough? Well, I don't think there's enough focus on this. We've seen our fertility rate drop again below 1.5 babies per person. That's going to see a situation where by the end of this century or so, we'll have a population of only about a third of what we have today descended from those alive today. It changes rapidly unless we turn this around as a nation. So it should be a national priority. It's also a priority for every individual family to be able to spend that time with newborn babies, and I'd love to see us do more to do that.
Senator, in the past 20 years or so, maybe even more, it seems to me that it's very hard for a family to buy a house unless they both work. Does it disturb you that is the way that our society has evolved in the last few decades? Because it does mean that mothers or fathers who want to stay at home, they cannot do it on one income.
Yeah, look, it does. I think this is a major issue. In effect, it's sometimes just a temporary issue to get people through, because, as I say, it's often just around those times when a child is just growing up and not in school yet. It's very, very hard for both parents to work in those environments. Extended periods in childcare are difficult. We're putting enormous strain on our childcare system, with most people having to use use it. I saw the Finance Minister the other day, the Labor Finance Minister, say that in her view, kids are best off getting into childcare as soon as possible. She said that on Mother's Day. I think most people would love to see the balance shift more to be able to have more time with their young children, if possible, and take pressure off a childcare system where we've seen a number of very horrific circumstances emerge. It's obviously a sector that's under a lot of pressure because there's so many people having to use it. And so, yes, there's a housing issue, a housing question there to deal with, but there's also this tax issue I mentioned earlier that could help provide a little bit of extra support for families to make those choices. It's up to every individual family to make these choices. They're very difficult, but at the moment they don't get a lot of choice because of the tax and housing costs.
Senator, just on housing and migration. Yesterday, when Andrew Bragg suggested that the housing migration target could be achieved by cutting backpackers and some other things, was that something that had been either approved or even discussed in the shadow cabinet?
Look, I thought Andrew gave a terrific speech. He's doing excellent work on exposing the deficiencies in the government's housing agenda, the almost complete lack of homes that are being built. It's the core reason for all of this. And in regards to Andrew Speaks, well, I don't vest my other shadow ministers' speeches. They're free to speak. They're free to come out and talk to you and in the media. We have fruitful conversations about that. All Andrew said was that we'll look at all these things to bring migration numbers down. Now, I will say, though, that as leader of the Nationals Party, we will not be changing, we'll not be seeing changes to working holiday visa makers, because that's not the reason why we've had the surge in migration. We've had those circumstances in place for a long time, and what we'll be focusing on is those programs that have blown out under this government and caused us to have unbelievable level of migration that we've never seen before.
Should those schemes be ring-fenced then from any cuts? For example, holiday makers, unskilled workers, should you just ring-fence those and look at other...
Well, look, I wouldn't use that term, Cameron, but what I'm saying here is we need to focus on those areas that have been the problem. And working holiday visa scheme has been around for a long time, and it serves our country very well. Keep in mind too, this is a question not just about the numbers, but where those numbers are causing stress. So a lot of those working holiday visa makers, in fact, a requirement of them is to spend time away from our capital cities. And so those often colloquially referred to backpackers are not taking a house in a major city away from others that could be using it. There are other visa schemes, of course, where more of that intake is being skewed towards our major cities, where the issues are more paramount. So we should focus on where the problems are.
Just going back to that earlier question on families, just to clarify what you said so I understand it. You're right, a lot of people do say it's critical that children go into early childcare as soon as they possibly can. Do you not agree with that?
No, I think all the evidence is the more we can help people spend time with their young children, the better. I mean, this is very, very clear, and I don't know if Llew wants to add to this in the work, or David might be able to add to it. The evidence on this is very clear. The more time the newborn baby can spend with their mum and dad, on average, the best it is for them. It's really good for them. Really good for the kid, right? I suppose what I'd say here, Matt, is I view all of these policy questions through the lens of what is best for the child. They're the most important person in this debate. They are going to be critical to our country's future, so we should do everything to support what's the best for them. Now, it is of course true in a world where nothing is ever easy that people have to work. Sometimes both people have to work. Some people have to go back to work straight away, and so we need a functioning childcare system there, and that should be as well supported and funded as it can possibly be. But our goal should not be to maximise those children in childcare. The goal should be to help families navigate this difficult time in their life, challenging time in their lives, and, as I say, given all the evidence, to maximise the amount of time that young parents can spend with their young children.
Just going back to Andrew Bragg for just a moment, sorry.
Might get David, he's more of an expert than me.
For most families, childcare isn't materially beneficial. For particularly disadvantaged children and families in those most challenged cohorts, high quality childcare can be beneficial. But looking at the first 5 years project, the children in 30 hours plus, 40 hours plus have weaker developmental outcomes when they get to school. So there's not a strong case for pushing children back earlier, and this motion helps some of the families who could really use extra time and quality time with their parents.
Thank you.
Sorry, just back on Andrew Bragg. So you've said you are comfortable with him just expressing his views. Obviously, you disagree on the question of backpackers, and it's something that the Shadow Cabinet might discuss as part of finalising this migration policy. So, I mean, is it good for Angus Taylor and for you and the coalition to have disagreements like that play out in public, or would it be ideal if you hash them out behind?
I totally reject the assertions you've just made there. There's no disagreement.
disagreement.
All Andrew said was we could look at a range of these things. Of course we could. That's what he literally said. But what I'm saying is that we don't see the problem in working holiday visa makers, so there's no disagreement at all. Now, there's a mountain out of a molehill being made here, but I had a good chat with Andrew this morning. As I say, I think he's doing an excellent job as the Shadow Housing Minister. Fantastic work, and I want him to keep doing that.
Senator, you've seen the Prime Minister's explanation over the last couple of days about the podcast and the Mellons gesture. What have you made of his explanation?
It's been a national embarrassment. It really has been. Look, we all stuff up from time to time, and obviously the Prime Minister was trying to put his baseball cap backwards and look cool to the young kids out there on that podcast, and it didn't go all that well, as it often doesn't for a middle-aged man trying to be hip. And so, having stuffed up, the Prime Minister should just own up, man up, and apologise and move on. But we've had this rolling saga now for days because of the stubbornness of the Prime Minister. And then I know today, up there at Tomago, the Prime Minister needed the New South Wales Premier to come and save him. Well, this is a foreign policy matter, and we're now piling embarrassment upon embarrassment when a state Premier has to come in and save our Prime Minister from a diplomatic bungle.
What do you
Back
think
on
of the Tomago?
Andrew Bragg's speech, it does seem to have disgruntled some of his Liberal colleagues. James Patterson said, "I don't speculate about other colleagues' portfolios. The approach I take in my portfolio is that I convince my colleagues, I do the work, I take it through our processes." It does seem somewhat damaging to the Nats and to the Libs to go out and freelance on such a grand stage as the National President.
Well, look, I can't speak for others. I can only speak for myself. I think Andrew's doing a terrific job.
Senator, did you go and talk to Angus Taylor after Senator Bragg's speech, telling him to counsel Senator Bragg over
No,
the thing
I
that
did
he
not do that.
pushed?
No,
Did
but
you see the speech in advance?
no, as I said, I don't vet other people's speeches.
You didn't see it?
No, of course not. Of course not. Of course not.
So you had no idea that he was going to say that about backpack?
It's well, as I'm just to be very clear, I think he's doing a great job. I've got no problems here, but I don't read line by line the speeches of my colleagues. There are more important things to work on like this.
Senator, I know you
Yep.
hate net zero, but you mentioned Tomago earlier.
Yes.
What's your reaction to the use of public money to bail that job out? Would you think should they have done that, or is it your view that if they didn't have net zero, they wouldn't have to?
Well, look, we've got to save these jobs right now, but I'll make a couple of points, Matt. First of all, we were told time and time again that installing renewable energy would make energy cheaper, and it would be cheaper than the coal-fired power that has supported these thousands of aluminium jobs in our country for decades. We never needed billion-dollar subsidies when the smelters were running on coal-fired power. But only when they've decided to switch to so-called green energy, and I'll get to that, renewable energy, do they need massive taxpayer bailouts. So what today's announcement has shown, and the previous announcement a few months ago, keep in mind now that Rio Tinto is the recipient of, or will be the recipient of $4.5 billion of taxpayer subsidies, one of the biggest companies in the world, getting a $4.5 billion bailout. What that shows is that the government's net zero agenda has completely failed. And it's failed on its own terms. When Labor announced net zero and announced their policy, they explicitly said that this would lower the cost of energy, cut your power bills by $275, and it would lead to hundreds of thousands of new jobs, and 604,000 jobs, in fact, would be created by their net zero agenda. Instead, we're having to desperately try and save jobs with enormous, humongous taxpayer bailouts. Now, what is worse here is it's not even going to deliver the renewable environmental outcome that's promised. Some of this money is going towards these large battery parks that are going in people's backyards in my part of the world. There is nothing stopping Rio Tinto filling those batteries up with coal-fired power and then using the output of the battery and saying it's green energy. This is industrial energy laundering. Well, it's energy laundering on an industrial scale, where we're taking coal-fired power, washing it through a battery, that's paid for by taxpayers, and then allowing a big corporate to spruik its woke agenda on the global stage. Why? Why do we have to bail out another company's woke agenda with our money when we could instead just get rid of the carbon taxes? Keep in mind the government is imposing a carbon tax on Rio Tinto, the safeguard mechanism. Get rid of that, stop this cash merry-go-round, and get back to focusing on economic productivity, because this is just one example, but it's one big example of why our nation's productivity is in such freefall. We're still going to produce the same amount of aluminium, no more output, but it's going to cost us a hell of a lot more to do it. That is the very definition of weaker productivity growth.
Senator, do you think Australia should consider drawing back on the number of working holiday maker visas that it issues?
No, I think the system has worked well, and that's not been the problem. All good? Thanks, guys. Thank you. Cheers, guys. Thank you.